Hello to everyone and the internet. It is currently Friday, January 4th. I am Nathan of Washington, and you are watching The Globalist, and this is the news. So, Obama made America a sex trafficker's paradise. I'm going to read you an article now. It says, under Obama, U.S. became world's #1 hotspot for pedophilia. Under Obama's presidency, the United States became the world's #1 hotspot for pedophilia and sex trafficking. Barack Obama let America down in many ways during his time as president. Arguably his most unforgivable failure is the way he exposed our most vulnerable members of society to sex traffickers and predators. MedicalKidnap.com reports in 2016 Senator Rob Portman, Ohio, published a 6-month investigation looking at 125,000 unaccompanied minors who had crossed the U.S. borders in the United States since 2011, reportedly fleeing violence and unrest in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. This U.S. Senate report concluded that the Office of Refugee Resettlement Agency of the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, had failed to protect these children from human trafficking, leaving them vulnerable to abuses at the hands of government-approved caretakers. U.S. law requires HHS to ensure that unaccompanied alien children, or UAC, are protected from human trafficking and other forms of abuse, but Senator Portman's report made it clear that this was not happening, and that the U.S. had become a popular destination for child sex trafficking, increasing dramatically since 2014 under the Obama administration. Since 2014, the United States has experienced a large increase of unaccompanied alien children from Central America of the southern border. The number of UACs apprehended increased from approximately 8,000 fiscal year, FY 2008, to almost 69,000 in FY 2014, and 39,970 in fiscal year 2015. That's the FY, means fiscal year. The causes of the surge of UACs are disputed, but all stakeholders, including HHS, agree that one reason UACs come to this country is that they are brought into the United States by human trafficking rings. According to the State Department's 2015 Trafficking in Persons report, the United States is a source, transit, and destination country for men, women, transgender individuals, and children. Both U.S. citizens and foreign nationals subjected to sex trafficking and forced labor. There's been a lot of criticism in recent weeks about children allegedly being separated from their families when coming across the border. However, Senator Portman's 2016 report clearly shows that most of these children coming across the border are unaccompanied and being trafficked, with the vast majority of them not accompanied by family members. The report shows that even some of those released to family members end up being trafficked. HHS's process for verifying the alleged relationship between a UAC and an individual other than a parent, guardian, or close family member is unreliable and vulnerable to abuse. In general, HHS accepts that alleged relationship between a Category 3 sponsor and a UAC, e.g. neighbor from home country, if a person claiming to be the child's family member corroborates it. In a number of cases, however, parents who consented to the placement of their children with certain sponsors were also complicit in the child smuggling. In the Marion cases, for example, several victims' family members attested to the asserted relationship, but there was a reason. The human traffickers held the deeds to some of the families' homes as collateral for the child's journey to the United States. The sooner the child was released from HHS custody, the sooner they could begin working to repay the debt. Other cases revealed that parents have received HHS by claiming that a relationship existed between the sponsor and the UAC when it did not. Child Protection Services pipeline to child sex trafficking through foster care. As informative as Senator Portman's 2016 congressional report was revealing how the U.S. is a top destination for child trafficking, to understand the full scope of the problem today, we need to look at the main problem within our borders that allow this pedophilia market to exist. Sadly, when children are rescued from these sex trafficking cartels, the children are almost always put into a government-run system that itself is the source of most child sex trafficking within the U.S. Child Protection Services and the foster care system. One of the first public interviews revealing the depth of the problem of child trafficking within government child social services programs, Tammy Stefano of the National Safe Child Show was interviewed by film producer Sean Stone, where she stated that the child human trafficking business currently operating in the United States brings in more money than the illegal drug trade and illegal arms trade combined. Stefano was also one of the first to publicly expose that known child abusers were routinely being approved as foster parents, which allows child sex trafficking to continue in the United States. She reported how the Los Angeles Times published an article exposing how 1,000 convicted sex offenders had been given a green light by CPS to become approved foster parents, just in Los Angeles County. Today in 2018, more of this practice of approving sex offenders and pedophiles to become foster parents to meet the demands of the lucrative child sex trafficking business is coming to light. Earlier this year, attorney Michael Dulce from the law firm Cohen-Milstein wrote an opinion piece published by Newsweek stating that the nation's foster care system is set up to sexually traffic children. Dulce, who speaks from experience from representing children abused in foster care, stated, "Here's the ugly truth. Most Americans who are victims of sex trafficking came from our nation's own foster care system. It's a deeply broken system that leaves thousands vulnerable to pimps as children and grooms them for the illegal sex trade as young adults. We have failed our children by not fixing the system, failures that allowed this to happen for decades. Even local news stations are beginning to cover this topic, as a local news station in Boston recently reported sex traffickers are selling foster kids on the weekends. 25 investigates has uncovered. Investigative reporter Eric Rasmussen found cases of kids in foster care pimped out on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then returned to their taxpayer-funded group homes on Monday. Records obtained by 25 investigates reveal a female staff member working with foster kids at the Elliott Atlantic House in Saugus, as is suspected, of convincing a then 16-year-old girl at the group home to sell herself for sex on the weekends. The staff member told the foster child she had a way they could make money together, according to a report obtained by 25 investigates. The girl told investigators staff member took her to Worcester 3 times and once to Boston to have sex with unknown men for money on weekends. Boston 25 spent a year investigating this issue, and they found that the problem of foster care children gone missing and pimped into children's child sex trafficking rings happens throughout the U.S., not just in Boston. Last year, 2017, Medina County, Texas Sheriff Randy Brown publicly criticized the Texas Child Protection Services, CPS, after he arrested a 58-year-old man for sexually abusing 5 former foster care children. The man, Miguel Bruseno, had at various times taken up to 12 girls at one time, and a total of 180 girls had passed through his care, according to a report by San Antonio Express News. Sheriff Brown told the San Antonio Express, "It's not a question about whether there are more, it's just about how many. Those girls were taken from some environment, and then you have some jackass like him abusing these girls that already have troubles," Brown said. "I'm aggravated at the whole system. I'm aggravated at the company that placed these girls. It was a money-making deal. The way they were running those girls through there like livestock. It wasn't about making a better world for them. They were making a profit off them." Texas, like many states, has an ongoing federal lawsuit against them for allowing foster children to be abused and sexually trafficked. U.S. District Judge Yanis Ramjak ruled against the state of Texas in December of 2015, stating that the foster care system named in the lawsuit was unconstitutional. In her 255-page ruling, Judge Jack stated, "Texas PMC permanent managing conservatorship children have been shuttled throughout a system where rape, abuse, psychotropic medication, and instability are the norm." The Texas Tribune ran a series of articles in 2017 highlighting the problem of child sex trafficking in Texas. 86% of runaway children in the United States suspected of being forced into sex work came from the child welfare system, according to a 2016 analysis of cases reported to the National Center on Missing and Exploited Children. Of the 79,000 child sex trafficking victims estimated to be in the state, the vast majority were in foster care or had previous contact with Child Protective Services, according to a recent University of Texas study. In 2017, Health Impact News was able to publish the case of David Frodsham in the military town of Sierra Vista, Arizona, where he was arrested and convicted for running a child pornography pedophile ring out of his state-approved foster home in June of 2017. David Frodsham is a former commander with the Department of Defense in Afghanistan who was discharged from duty due to sexual harassment behavior and assessment by the military that he had unalterable personality disorder. And yet he was approved by the state of Arizona to run a foster care home where he allegedly routinely abused and raped children in a pedophilia ring. In 2017, David Frodsham was arrested for the abuse of the young child Devani, who was seized from her family just days before her second birthday and placed into the Frodsham state-approved foster home, where she was allegedly raped repeatedly and trafficked as part of an organized pornographic pedophile ring. After David Frodsham was arrested due to a federal investigation, Devani was placed into another state-approved foster home where 80% of her body was burned by scalding water, forcing the amputation of her toes. Another foster child who was adopted by the Frodshams and put into their pornographic pedophile ring turned 18 and came forward to reveal details of years of horrible torture and sexual trafficking while suing the state of Arizona for damages of $15 million. These horrible stories that we've exposed here are really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to child sex trafficking through CPS and foster care system. Recently, Health Impact News covered the story of Jennifer Guskin, who was adopted as a baby herself and was recently gone public with horrific details about her childhood, how she became a victim of child sex trafficking and experimentation. Not long before Child Protective Services and the police showed up on her doorstep to take away her own infant child, Jennifer Guskin released the first two in a set of YouTube videos in which she had begun to talk about some of what she went through growing up in foster care, and as part of a nationwide pedophile sex trafficking operation. The videos describe allegations of unimaginable horrors of child sex trafficking and experimentation, and a pedophile and pedophilia network that allegedly reaches the highest levels of government and society. Warning: graphic content about topics such as cannibalism, child sex, torture, murder, etc. not suitable for children. And I think I'll stop it there. So it's pretty clear that Obama's lax policies about immigration were by and large mostly to blame. And don't go thinking that CPS is some kind of horrible, horrible thing in of itself. Because as a child, I was starved for attention and I frequently ran away. And for a while I went through a few foster homes. And they were pretty decent people. I developed a taste for clam chowder with one family before deciding to go vegan a few years ago. It's also where I learned to love crackers and other stuff. They were decent families. It's also how I learned what Mormons are like. Wow. Off the topic. But Obama's intentions were most likely to allow ease of immigration due to his political philosophy about America being a nation of immigrants. His intentions were probably pure. But as they say, the road to hell is paved with bad intentions. Good intentions. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Simply because your intentions are good does not mean that the fruits of your actions will be good. Most certainly not. Bottom line is, Obama's policies were ill-informed, naive, and very, very left-leaning. Everything the guy did was pretty much left-leaning. Leftism and neoliberalism, I think, is a harmful political ideology, and it will, in the end, expose us to danger that they just, for whatever reason, can't see. I heard an explanation once about the difference between conservatism and liberalism, and I think it's actually quite true. Conservatives are cautious, not necessarily afraid or paranoid, but very cautious about trying new things. Whereas liberals are like moths to the flame. They're overly curious and want to try a little bit of everything. They have a very welcoming, open, and naive view of the world. They're like children, in a sense. And in the end, like the moth to the flame, eventually you get burned. Bottom line is, Obama was easily one of the worst presidents we've ever had. Not because of any foul intention, but because he simply didn't know what the hell he was doing. His political ideology was naive and childlike, and it ruined the lives of many actual children. A senior reporter for NBC has quit because he got tired of the establishment propaganda. Now, this will be another article I'm going to read to you. This is a somewhat shorter one, but I need to read it in order for you to get the nuance. There's just too much to unravel here. But the senior NBC reporter quits. It's establishment propaganda. A senior NBC reporter has quit the news network over the obsession with promoting pro-war establishment propaganda 24 hours a day. William M. Arkin, a veteran national security reporter, wrote a scathing farewell message to his colleagues, warning them that NBC has given endless war and destructive intelligence agencies a free pass due to their around-the-clock anti-Trump hysteria. Hysteria is the right word. It's a good word. RT.com reports Arkin had a number of pointed words to share with his fellow reporters before his last day of work at NBC on Friday, 2,228 to be exact. In his farewell memo, which reads more like a manifesto than a goodbye, the veteran muckraker accused NBC of peddling ho-hum reporting that essentially condones endless American military presence in the Middle East and North Africa. He also took the network to task for not reporting the failures of the generals and national security leaders, essentially becoming a defender of the government against Trump and a cheerleader for open and subtle threat-mongering. A longtime reporter at work and leaves NBC and MSNBC email statements saying these outlets are captive to the national security state and devoted to endless war. Defenders of the government against Trump, cheerleaders for open and subtle threat-mongering, reflexively pro-war. That was the tweet. On January 2nd, 2019. Arkin expressed concerns that NBC's infatuation with the Trump circus has distracted journalists from pressing stories that need to be told. I'm more worried about how much we are missing, hence my desire to take a step back and think why so little changes with regard to America's wars, he wrote. He continued by questioning the media's fanatical opposition to Trump's desire to improve relations with Russia, denuclearize North Korea, and withdraw from Syria. I am alarmed at how quick NBC is to maniacally argue the contrary. To be in favor of policies that just spell more conflict and more war. Really? We shouldn't get out Syria? We shouldn't go for the bold move of denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula? Even Russia, though we should be concerned about the brittleness of our democracy, that is so vulnerable to manipulation. Do we really yearn for the Cold War? And don't even get me started with the FBI. What? We now lionize this historically destructive institution? He quipped. If anyone is qualified to critique NBC's military and national security reporting, it would be Arkin. The veteran journalist has worked for the network intermittently for the last 30 years and co-authored a seminal Washington Post investigation revealing the dangerous rise of America's security state. The tweet is as follows. My guess is Mattis 2020 on Syria and Afghanistan and North Korea. Trump has the right instincts and on national security stagnation, both in warfare and thought again. He has no ability to implement or even learn about the enemies of Trump should become the war party. Arkin has also been a vocal critic of America's wars in the Middle East and distinguished himself as one of the few mainstream journalists to question the fictitious WMD rolled out to justify the war with Iraq. Many on social media expressed their gratitude to Arkin for shining a light on the media's complacency and complicity as America's military and national security apparatus operate with near impunity both at home and abroad. Very useful to have all our well-known suspicions confirmed from inside. There's a reason revolutions make a priority to take over the TV stations, one Twitter user noted. Geopolitical analyst Emma Ashford noted that Arkin's letter was a very fair criticism of most mainstream news networks. Arkin finished his farewell roast by detailing some of his writing projects currently in the works, including an extended essay about national security and why we never seem to end our now perpetual state of war. There's lots of media critique out there, tons of analysis of leadership and the presidency. But on the state of our national security, not so much. Hopefully I'll find myself thinking beyond the current fire and fury, and actually suggest a viable alternative. Wish me luck. This should basically prove to anyone still in doubt or in the closet that the MSM is indeed a propaganda machine intended for the political class. NBC? How about NPC? MSNPC? How MSNPC will probably be the last to die when the MSN networks finally do begin to fail. Bottom line is, when the mainstream media does start to fail, MSNPC will take the longest to get rid of. Because that's been the major one. That's been the major liberal establishment news outlet. It'll take the longest to get rid of. But when it does go, it should go. The establishment in this country is absolutely corrupt. Everything about it. It's time we start voting for civilian politicians and get rid of the political class. Trump is, in every way, a civilian politician. Independently wealthy. Was not raised in one of these political oligarch families like the Clintons and the Bushes. He was not involved in the constant pursuit for political power like the Clintons. He was an independently wealthy land baron. Anyway, bottom line is, mainstream news, propaganda. Stick with me. Stick with me. I'm telling you. Come with me if you want to live. Or in this case, if you want to be told the truth. To be a little funny here and to lighten the mood a bit. Nancy Pelosi claims that the Speaker of the House is just as powerful as the President under the Constitution. I'm not so sure about that, but I will say that Nancy Pelosi is probably the most winning politician the Democrats have. And yet they're putting forth Elizabeth Warren for president. Probably because Pelosi doesn't want to. She probably thinks that she's just as powerful, perfectly comfortable in the House of Representatives. Just let her keep thinking that. Just let her keep thinking that, because I'd be afraid of the Democrats winning back the presidency if they put her into the position. But is the Speaker of the House as powerful as President under the Constitution? I'm not so sure. I suppose in the sense that since the House of Representatives means they represent state rights, that's part of their function. They are countercurrent to the legislative branch of the government. Or, no, not legislative, executive. So, in a sense, I suppose she is right. In a sense. If she's right, then I'm afraid it's sad that she's in charge over there. This country will not be able to function with democratic vitriol aimed squarely at Trump all the time. It's going to hold us back. Still, nonetheless, it's something we're going to have to deal with. An essential, and now I'm going to pull some quotes for you. An essential step toward breaking down the binary ideological systems created in order to justify and uphold social, political, and economic oppression systems, which result ultimately in the separation of all from ourselves and our humanity, says a non-binary snowflake. Now that New York allows you to put X on your birth certificate without medical permission, just go to an office and you're done. Honey, listen, we're not trying to dehumanize you. You can go and be whatever you want. You want to pretend that you're not a man or a woman, you want to pretend you're a woman or whatever, go ahead, so be it. But you cannot force your beliefs onto others. By putting this law into action, you are forcing your beliefs on others. whether you want to admit it or not. See, because this doesn't just apply to your own birth certificate, it applies to everyone's birth certificate. What you fail to understand is that when they make an exception for one person, they usually have to make an exception for everyone. That's how government works, unfortunately. Bottom line is, things were better, I think, for the trans community and for everyone prior to this being signed into action. Getting medical permission, being post-op, should have been the way to do things. Needing medical permission to do it should have been resumed. This is not the way to go. That's not freedom. That's not real freedom. That's government legislation. That's Big G. That's Big Brother. And we don't need Big Brother. A government big enough to give you everything you want is a government big enough to take it all away. And in the end, that's my problem with socialism. Financially speaking, who knows? Maybe socialism can work. Historically, it hasn't. Historically, it hasn't. But my problem with socialism, and I don't think not anyone on this earth could ever possibly disagree with, is that in order for it to work, socialism needs Big Brother. It needs big government. It needs Big G. And the problem with that is, again, if they can give you everything you want, they can take it away, too. You are opening the door to tyranny. I know you're going to say, oh, I'm just making a big deal out of nothing. Am I? Am I? Because like I said, this applies to all birth certificates in the state of New York. What if they did it for the entire country? All birth certificates? Not everyone agrees with the transgender ideology, and they shouldn't have to. This is a legal compromise towards their beliefs. And that, in a way, is dehumanizing. It invalidates it invalidates heartfelt conservatism. And it invalidates just literally science. That, I'm sorry, but non-binary, it's all in your head, dude. It don't exist. And for our final story today, for the Young Globalist, Britain does not like Assad, says he will be around for a while, and blames everyone's favorite scapegoat, Russia. It's always Russia. Everybody blames Russia. Just imagine what Putin thinks about all this stuff about people saying Russia this, Russia that. He probably thinks we're all nuts. He probably thinks we're all fucking crazy. And when you go around blaming Russia for literally everything, think about it. If all the things we blame Russia for were all true all at once, when would Russia have any time to take care of their own country? They'd always be meddling with other people's. Where would they have time to take care of their own government and own people? That's crazy. It wouldn't be possible for them to have their hands in that many things. That's nuts. It's just scapegoating. That's all that is. That's just a scapegoat. I know it and you know it. The only difference between you and me, a person who hates Russia, is that I have the ability to admit it, and you don't. But we both know it. Stop lying. Just stop it. And I know they don't like Assad, because Britain feels that he is defamatory and he causes conflict and he even exacerbates conflict. To some extent, that is true, but Assad also is very much needed for Iran because he's constantly fighting terrorism, constantly fighting ISIS. He's defending his country from very real threats. I think it's because Britain wants to be the force to do that, not Assad. Because remember, America was not the first country to do the world policing. We got that attitude from Britain. There's actually some people in America who still see America as an English colony. They still see us as a part of England. The Amish see it that way. Many Catholics see it that way. And whether we want to admit it or not, America is an Anglican nation. We are culturally Anglican. We are derived from English values and English thinking. Same as Australia, same as New Zealand. All the former colonies, whether we want to admit it or not. We got the world policing from them. That was our inheritance. But Assad's going to be around for a while. He said so. He's going to be around for a while. And of course, Britain blames Russia for putting Assad in power. Of course. And like I said, if they really had all that in their hands and all that much stuff, when would they have time to take care of their own country? It's ridiculous. That just seems to be a leftist tactic now. It's just, oh, Russia, you know. Anyway, that's it for the Unglobalist today, folks. I'm out.